to befriend the class clown, who was also the dead last. Since then, Naruto simply stopped interacting with him outside spars, where he forced himself to lose every time. He did not want to reveal all his cards just yet. But on the inside, he had a desire to be acknowledged by him. His training had gone very well in the last 6 years. He had finished his taijutsu training in 1.5 years, with 6 additional months of self-training. After that, Anko had proudly declared him to be a master of the snake-style taijutsu after getting stalemated in a spar with him. It was after this he had started creating his own style, using the snake style as foundation. His own imagination was very useful in creating moves, blocks, strikes that were completely unique to his style. After he had mastered the snake style, he had started to work on his speed and with the help of shadow clones, had drawn resistance seals on his body. It was a bit weird at first, but he quickly got accustomed to it. Currently, he was on the 12th level of the resistance seal. He could have already started using the training simulation, but felt that the time was not right, so he held off until he became a genin, preferring to spar with Anko. Her help was invaluable in creating his new style, which was very unpredictable, exactly how he wanted it to be. His style had an attack stance, but he preferred to let his opponents attack him first. He had incorporated his danger sense into his style, making it even more efficient. His style was a combination of linear and unpredictability. He would attack whenever he saw the openings and attack however he could. He had based his style so he did not have any restrictions or limitations. In short, he had successfully created and mastered his own fighting style in 5 years, and just like his father said, it was as aggressive as fire, as sharp as wind, as fast as lightning, as strong as the earth, as fluid as water, and as unpredictable as the nature. The perfect fighting style. He decided to name it the Elemental Fist. Pretty badass. His sensory abilities had been perfected over the course of 6 years. He had help from his Jiji, whose sensei, the Naidame, was said to be the greatest censor of his time. He had graciously allowed him to study his sensei's scrolls on sensing. The more Naruto read, the more he was convinced that the Naidame was a genius of his father's caliber. He had developed his own sensing techniques, which Naruto had eagerly learnt. Naruto could now accurately sense chakra to the point that he could identify nature affinities if he concentrated hard enough. His ninjutsu had progressed as far as well. His chakra control and reserves only increased over time, and he made sure he had enough jutsu in his arsenal of all 4 of his affinities. He had also created a way of copying jutsu from others. Whenever he would watch someone perform a jutsu, he would immediately hone in on the chakra in that person's body, sensing how it was being molded. His photographic memory combined with his now controlled danger sense ensured he could copy hand seals in slower perception. This skill had greatly impressed his Jiji. He was also pretty smug about the fact that he had successfully copied the great fireball jutsu from Sasuke from when he had once watched him train. Also, he had literally begged the Sandame to let him study from the Naidame's library, considering that he had 4 affinities that could rival Tobirama's water affinity, and the former Hokage literally had a huge library that was full of jutsus of all nature transformations. Sarutobi was outraged at his request, but Naruto had reasoned that he had the ability to make use of them. Besides, the Naidame had no use for them now since he was dead. Sarutobi had very reluctantly allowed him to study from the library, but had made him swear that he won't tell anyone. The fact that he was a seal master had helped him study and understand the Hiratian scroll his father had left him. He had to admit that it was incredibly complex. From what he understood, it was a part of the rarely studied field of spacetime. It was a perfect combination of ninjutsu and fuinjutsu. His father had left him an astounding amount of chakra theory for him to recreate the jutsu. In summary, it was using fuinjutsu to create a temporary tear in spacetime, traveling through it and appearing on the other end near instantly. It relied on the principle of teleportation. Once you enter the tear of spacetime, your body is dispersed into millions of particles of chakra that reassemble just before you exited the spacetime. Naruto's challenge was in recreating the jutsu Shiki. His father's famous kunai had only 5 kanji on it that he used very successfully. The scroll was enormous, even with his father's improved notes. He had to shorten it, just like his father did, into 5 or 6 kanji. At first he had made the mistake of using his father's formula, imprinted on a kunai, the difference being that instead of his father's chakra, it was his. It even sort of worked, but he slowly discovered the problem in that method. It was taking him too long to sense the kunai, he was wasting chakra as well. He had then reread that every Hiraishin formula was unique to its user. He had to painstakingly start from scratch to build his own formula, which would require a lot of time. 2 months of curses and ink marks later, he had proudly created his own Hiraishin formula, with a few interesting modifications of his own. He had modified his formula so that instead of sensing the kunai and forcing yourself into the spacetime, which had become easier with his own formula, he maintained a very weak link with whatever he had put his formula in. Whenever he molded chakra and honed on a particular kunai, the link would instantly teleport him, without him having to force himself through. He now required significantly less chakra to use Hiraishin, and sensing the kunai became easier. His formula was 4 kanji symbols forming the phrase, fall down 7 times, stand up 8. It was his proudest creation yet. There was one last modification he had made, but gave credit of it to Kurama. Kurama had very strategically pointed out that he would not be able to use Hiraishin in places where there is water. For 4 days straight, he worked on another formula which would allow his kunai to stick on water surface. When he had finally tried the Flying Thunder God, he was ecstatic. But he also discovered the jutsu's disadvantages. It took time getting used to. It took him 37 successful teleport attempts to end up on the other side without nauseating. He still sucked at genjutsu. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't perform a single one. But thanks to his sensory abilities, he could easily break out of one. But this hadn't been tested as of yet. Kurama had very patiently told him that due to the abundance of yang chakra in him, he could never perform genjutsu, which required yin chakra. He had pondered on whether to learn kenjutsu or not, but something inside him told him that he was not cut out for it. To compensate for it, he had perfected his fighting with dual kunai held in reverse grip. He also knew that he could coat the kunai with wind chakra to sharpen it and lengthen its reach, but had yet to try it out in a real fight. An important thing he had discovered in the last 6 years was that he was alone. He knew that before as well, but had no idea how bad it was. Whenever the parents would come pick their children up, they would turn scornful gazes on him. It cut him every time, but he never allowed it to show on his face. He simply covered with a bored, indifferent look. He had developed a technique of his own after learning the Shunshin no Jutsu, just for battle purposes. The Shunshin simply took too much time for his taste, and he did not want to become too reliant on the Hiraishin. Therefore, he created Shuunpa, the flash step. He would focus his chakra into his leg and would vanish in a sudden burst of speed. He created this for short-distance purposes in a fight. He was probably at low chunin to mid chunin speeds, counting with the resistance seals on. He also had his IQ tested by Gigi. With an IQ of 177, he was one of the rare geniuses that came once in a generation. He was in league with the Yandame, the Nidame, and Itachi Uchiha. As he stood upon the gates reminiscing, a sudden noise caught his attention. He smirked. That's right, all the alarms would be sounding now, waking them up from their precious sleep. It was his final prank before he became an official ninja. All the civilian council members had been pranked by him. He had set off a timed-release stink bomb in each of the houses, courtesy of Fuinjutsu. He knew the blame would come onto him, but he had made sure nothing connected him to the crime. He also knew that the ANBU would be searching for him due to his prankster reputation. Normally he would proudly take credit for his work, but since it was the important people this time, he made sure to have an alibi, which was the academy. He had specifically set them off just 5 minutes before the first bell rang, 10 minutes before which he was already in class usually. He easily sensed the jutsu shiki he had imprinted in the tree outside the academy and silently vanished in a tiny, blue flash. Appearing on the tree, he closed his eyes as if searching for something. The next moment, the air around him shimmered a little. Naruto then puffed into smoke, signifying that he had perfectly substituted with the shadow clone that was sitting inside the class. The class was as usual, very noisy and chaotic. Thankfully, his shadow clone was sitting on the last bench, which meant he did not draw unnecessary attention. As the memories of the clone came to him, he blinked and then scoffed at the stupidity of the people. Did they really think I would keep wearing that orange jumpsuit? The shadow clone had received stares from people in his change of clothes. Sakura had yelled at him to not act like he was cool, but he had ignored it easily, as was his habit. The clock struck 8, and Irika-sensei entered the classroom, followed by Mizuki-sensei. Naruto hated him. Mizuki always tried to fail Naruto in all the tests by casting genjutsu on them, making them appear tougher. But Naruto paid no mind and continued writing the wrong answers to maintain his facade of dead last. He gave no indication that he knew of Mizuki's pathetic ways to fail him. Finally, the class settled down and Mizuki handed out the papers. As he gave it to Naruto, a very ugly sneer appeared on his face, kind of like a sick smile. Naruto looked at his paper and back to Mizuki, who seemed to be glowing with triumph. Naruto sent an "Are you kidding me?" look mixed in a deadpan stare. He then promptly dispelled the genjutsu on the test, making a blank page appear. So this is your game, he thought with amusement. Raising his hand, he said in a cool tone that perfectly matched his facial expression of bored indifference, "Mizuki-sensei, I believe that you put this blank page here by mistake." Mizuki's thunderous expression almost made him smirk, but he reined it in with experience. He came up to Naruto, a smile staining his face. "Thanks for pointing it out, Naruto. Good thing you spotted it, otherwise you would have failed," he said, placing the real test on his desk. Turning back, a furious expression came across his face. How did the demon spot the genjutsu? He never could do it before. Usually when tests were conducted, Naruto would purposely answer so he barely passed or failed. But today, he decided to let his intelligence shine through. He could hold back a little less today. He finished the paper with 20 minutes to spare, but kept the appearance of writing as to avoid suspicion. He could see that Sakura and Sasuke had also finished roughly at the same time. It was not surprising since Sakura was considered the class bookworm and Sasuke was quite intelligent. Everyone else finished at roughly at same time around. After collecting their papers, Irika-sensei called out, "All right everyone, next section will be weapons. Proceed to the practice fields." Naruto waited in the crowd for his turn. Since it was alphabetical order, he was pretty much in the last. He watched as Sasuke's turn came and observed as Sasuke hit all the 10 bullseyes for kunai and shuriken, save for one. 9 bullseyes out of 10 was the highest score yet. Finally, it was his turn. He went in front of the crowd and to the box where the shuriken were kept. He took 5 of them out and holding 3 in his left hand and 2 in his right, threw them all simultaneously. He watched as they all hit bullseye with boredom, as if he did this every day. He proceeded to do the same with kunai. The whole class was shocked and gaping at what they saw. Naruto Uzumaki, the class clown and dead last, had beaten Sasuke Uchiha's score very easily. The said Uchiha was frowning heavily, not liking that the dead last of the class had beaten his score, that too looking as if he was barely concentrating. Irika was shocked as well. Naruto never displayed such skill before. "Gee, good job, Naruto. You have the highest score in the class," he complimented, before moving on to the next student, not noticing that Mizuki was barely keeping himself from strangling the blonde. The said blonde turned in his direction and gave a smirk, infuriating him even more. After the weapons part of the exams was over, Irika called out, "Everyone, gather around for the taijutsu portion of this exam." Naruto frowned minutely at this. Every time they practiced taijutsu, he was always up against Sasuke, no doubt because Mizuki wanted to see him lose. This time would be no different. He was right. "Sasuke Uchiha and Naruto Uzumaki, please enter the ring," Mizuki announced almost gleefully. He was fully prepared to see Naruto beaten down, and if he was lucky, he could fail him. "Beat Baka Naruto, Sasuke-kun." Sakura screeched, causing many people to cover their ears. Ino supported her by shouting as well, "Show him you're the best, Sasuke-kun." Naruto could have sworn that he saw blood coming out of Akamaru's ears. Almost no one cheered for him, but his sensitive ears caught a soft-spoken voice saying, "Gee, good luck, and Naruto-kun." He smiled in thanks at Hinata, who fainted at his smile. He then turned his attention towards Sasuke, the same bored look from before back on his face. Sasuke stepped in with a serious frown, still feeling upset that the dope of all people beat him. Naruto still had the infuriating look of bored indifference on his face, as if he barely considered Sasuke a challenge. Sasuke almost snarled, "That dope is mocking me." "Hajime," Mizuki called out and jumped out of the ring. Sasuke slid into his clan's fighting style, the Interceptor Fist. Since it mainly relied on the Sharingan, he could not use it to his full potential. "But I don't need the Sharingan to beat Dobe of all people," he thought smugly. But wasn't prepared for what came to him. Naruto was contemplating whether he should end this quickly or prolong it, just to see how angry he could get Sasuke. "Nah, I'll end this quick," he thought. He would use every advantage he could get. It was his fighting style after all. He stood in a semi-ready stance, watching as Sasuke did not bother to enter his until the signal to begin was given. "Got him," he thought with a mental smirk. As soon as the signal was given, Naruto didn't waste any time to get into a stance. Sasuke had provided an opening, and he would fully use it. He used the speed he had built up all over the years to get into Sasuke's guard in an instant. One moment Naruto was standing opposite to him, another moment he was kneeing Sasuke's chin very painfully. The force of the blow was such that Sasuke was thrown right out of the ring. Even though he recovered mid-air and was able to soften his landing, a furious expression was on his face. Kurama was heartily laughing inside his mind, pleased to see Sasuke getting his ass handed to him. The class was silent for a moment. Naruto had beaten Sasuke a second time, that too in just one move. Then came the accusations, Naruto cheated, Irika-sensei. There's no way Baka Naruto can beat Sasuke-kun. He cheated, Irika-sensei. Irika was getting fed up at how the fangirls were shouting ridiculous and useless accusations. He could see what Naruto had used was pure speed, and nothing else. Shut up. Naruto has not cheated. If anyone knows better, speak up. Naruto was watching the drama unfold with hands crossed across his chest, amusement dancing in his eyes. He almost laughed when Sakura, the ever-devout fangirl, screeched, "Irika-sensei. There's no way Baka Naruto could beat Sasuke-kun. Therefore he must have cheated. That's a very logical reason, isn't it?" Naruto thought with sarcasm. Irika turned a stern glare on her, and just how did Naruto cheat, care to explain, Sakura? Sakura opened her mouth, but closed it since nothing came to mind. An embarrassed blush spread across her face and she fell back into the crowd. Irika nodded and called out, "Everyone head inside for the ninjutsu portion." Mizuki was looking like someone shit in his breakfast and made him eat it. "Don't you get so smug, demon. I will fail you somehow," he thought angrily. They headed into their class and everyone sat down, keeping their distance from Naruto, who had gone to the back of the class and had pulled out a book to read. "All right, you will all sit here until we call out your name. When we do, come into the next room for your exam," Irika said before calling the first student. Sasuke had long since gone back to brooding again, though this time he had a faint aura of anger around him. "How is the dobe so good? I never saw any signs of skill in him, and every time he was the last in class, so why was he able to beat me that easily? It doesn't make any sense," he thought furiously. Soon enough, it was Sasuke's turn. He went out of the door and returned 5 minutes, a hitayate on his head. He smirked in the direction of Naruto, but grit his teeth when he saw that Naruto wasn't even paying attention to his surroundings, he was too engrossed in his little book. "This book is very interesting," he thought as he read the tips and tricks of Fuinjutsu written by his parents. So engrossed he was that he almost missed his name being called out. He snapped his book shut and put it in his pocket. He then proceeded into the next room. Irika and Mizuki were sitting on chairs, a desk in front of them. Mizuki watched with barely hidden glee. "Today you will fail, demon." "All right, Naruto, perform the Henge no Jutsu," Irika instructed. Naruto nodded and formed the ram seal. A puff of smoke later, the Yandame Hokage was standing in front of them. Irika smiled. Naruto was full of surprises today. "Very good, Naruto. Now perform the Kawarimi no Jutsu." Naruto nodded, and a second later, Mizuki was sitting on the ground, wondering how he came there. A second later, he turned furious eyes onto Naruto, who was looking a little too innocent. "I'm sorry, sensei, are you okay?" he asked, with fake concern in his voice. Mizuki got up and brushed himself. "I'm okay, Naruto, don't worry," he said with gritted teeth. Iruka nodded approvingly. "Excellent, Naruto, you performed it without smoke and without seals too. You get extra points for that." He looked up from the paper and said, "Lastly, perform the Bunshin no Jutsu." There was some fear in his voice. Naruto could never perform it perfectly. But Naruto surprised them yet again. Holding up a half-ram seal, there was a puff of smoke and 3 Narutos were standing in front of him. Of course, they were actually Kage Bunshin, but they didn't need to know that. He was actually proud that he only needed a half-ram to execute Kage Bunshin, instead of the full seal. Mizuki watched helplessly as Iruka declared Naruto passed and told him to pick between black and blue. Naruto picked the blue Itaite and asked if Iruka could tie it just beneath his left jacket sleeve. Walking out of the room, he saw that the class was giving him the same, gaping look, again. Annoyance passed on his face. "What are you looking at?" Kiba pointed an accusing finger at him, a shocked look on his face. "You got a Itaite." Naruto simply gave him a deadpan stare. Slowly clapping, he sarcastically drawled, "Well done, Kiba, you now have a firm grasp of the obvious." Snickers erupted in the classroom as Naruto made Kiba feel stupid with a single statement. Kiba prepared to pounce on Naruto when Iruka entered the classroom. "Everyone settle down." After everyone was seated, he said, "Those people who have passed will come tomorrow in the morning for team assignments. You can leave now." Naruto leisurely walked out of the academy, in no hurry. He had nothing else to do, so he sat down on the swing on the academy's tree. He sat there for a long time, thinking of what he will eat today. He sensed someone coming and hid his scowl. What does Mizuki want now? Mizuki came up behind Naruto. "Congratulations on passing, Naruto." He almost threw up in his mouth saying that. Naruto curtly replied, "Thanks." He said no more than that, he didn't need to. Mizuki approached him, "So he will be the one to talk. I was impressed on how you performed, Naruto. But you still don't have enough points to claim Rookie of the Year. I will offer you a special test if you're interested in that title," he said. Naruto just looked at the man. "What a fucking idiot," Kurama helpfully supplied. But Naruto wanted to see where this was going. "Really, Mizuki-sensei?" he hopefully asked. Mizuki smiled at how easily he fooled the demon. "Yeah. You just need to take a scroll from the Hokage vault in the Hokage's office and bring it to me beside the old shed in the forest at midnight. You know that, right? Bring it to me and consider yourself the Rookie of the Year," he said as he walked away. "He really has a very low opinion of you, doesn't he?" Kurama commented. Naruto mentally agreed, "He just asked me to steal the forbidden scroll. What a moron," he thought as he flashed to the Hiraishin Shiki in his apartment. He had a seal to make. XXXXXXX. The sky was dark with clouds, shrouding the village in shadows. It was perfect for him to sneak around. In a series of flash steps, he was at the Hokage Tower in minutes. Dodging the ANBU on patrol, he easily masked his chakra signature and sneaked into the office. He soon found the Hokage vault and took out a piece of paper, a complex seal drawn on it. He slapped it onto the vault door and watched as it glowed for a moment. He knew opening the door was no problem for him, but the alarms that would sound after would be. Which is why he created a seal that would suppress the alarms of any seal for roughly 10 minutes. Enough for him to complete his task. He took the scroll and slung it around him. He exited the way he came from, but paused for a moment. "What's up, GG?" Hiruzen replied as if he totally hadn't caught Naruto stealing. "The night strolls are often very peaceful for me. I trust that the scroll would be returned, that was more of an order." Naruto simply nodded, making his way to the exit when Hiruzen stopped him. "You know it would look suspicious if it looked like I just let you through." A mischievous grin almost split his face in half. This was the perfect time to try it. He turned around, not bothering to hide his grin. He put his hands in the ram seal, whispering, "Oiroke no jutsu." A puff of smoke revealed a curvaceous and an extremely beautiful blonde female Naruto, clad in birthday clothes. Wisps of smoke were covering the more important bits. It was the Sandame's weakness as well as his sweetest dream. A huge amount of blood burst from his nose with such force that he fell backwards unconscious, having a perverted smile on his face. Naruto released the henge, barely holding himself from laughing out loud. Yash! Oiroke no Jutsu is a success, he thought in celebration before flash stepping out and into the forest. He arrived with half an hour to spare. Shrugging, he put the scroll on ground and opened it up, looking for something useful. He found the Kage Bunshin along with its explosive counterpart, Bunshin de Bakua. He also found the Gojo Kabaku Fuda, a jutsu created by the Nidame. It was about self-replicating explosive tags. A wicked grin crossed his face. I'll have so much fun with this one. He also found a very interesting theory on how to change the color of your lightning. A thoughtful look crossed his face and he mused, it will be cool if I can do that. The blue of lightning hurts my eyes. Red lightning sounds much better. He always avoided Raijin because it was just too bright for his eyes. So for the next 2 hours, he relentlessly practiced changing the color of his lightning. It was tedious work, but he was able to do it, without shadow clones. At the end of 2 hours, he lightly panted but watched in pride as red currents of lightning danced across his body. I did it! Who? The theory was easy to understand, but not so much when implementing, he thought with relief. The red lightning was significantly better on the eyes and was less chakra consuming, though he did not know why. Suddenly, he sensed a familiar chakra and smiled, about time someone came looking for me. A few moments later, Irika burst out of the bushes, looking around wildly. When he spotted Naruto innocently sitting on the ground with the forbidden scroll on his lap, he snapped. Naruto, he began in a strained voice, just what do you think you are doing? He ended in a shout. Naruto, to his credit, wasn't rattled a bit. He just smiled widely and decided to out the traitor. Well, Mizuki-sensei told me to bring this scroll for him here. So, I was just waiting for him, Irika-sensei. A cold feeling washed over him at that. Mizuki told you that? But explanations later, Irika-sensei. For now, be on your guard, Naruto calmly said as he stood up and slung the scroll over him, hands crossed over his chest as if waiting for something. Irika was about to grill him further when his instincts screamed at him to dodge. He leaped aside to dodge the hail of shuriken, but one struck his sleeve onto the shed and another got buried in his thigh. Naruto lazily caught the kunai that was heading towards him between two of his fingers. A second later Mizuki appeared before them, smiling smugly. Well done, Naruto. Now hand over that scroll to me, he said. Naruto was about to speak when Irika shouted, Mizuki, why are you doing this? Mizuki growled, for power, you idiot. I want power, nothing else. Naruto, hand it over. Right. Now. Don't do it, Naruto. Irika shouted desperately as he struggled to free himself. Mizuki smiled sickly. Do you know why everyone hates you, Naruto? Naruto raised an eyebrow, curious to hear what the traitor had to say. Oh, do tell. Don't do it, Mizuki. Irika shouted. This could not happen. It would absolutely break Naruto's spirit. It's because you're the Kyuubi. 12 years ago, when the Yondaime defeated the Kyuubi, he didn't kill it. He sealed it into a baby, which happened to be you. You hold the killer who took thousands of lives that day, including Irika's parents, he finished in a crazed tone. XXXXXXX Hiruzen, who was watching from his ball, had gone pale. This isn't good. That idiot Mizuki has told Naruto of the secret. But then he noticed that Naruto hadn't reacted to that at all. His face became paler, nearly to the point of white. Could it be that he already knows? He refocused himself and watched. XXXXXXX Naruto simply gave Mizuki his patented look. Are you done displaying your stupidity? Mizuki was as confused as Irika. You are obviously unworthy of your rank since you can't tell the difference between a sealing scroll and the kunai which is sealed into it. As for the Kyuubi, I have already known for 6 years, he calmly revealed. Irika had gone pale at that. Naruto had known since he started the academy. Mizuki was growling at the insult aimed at him. How dare that demon insult him? And you tried to hurt Irika-sensei. Here his tone turned menacing, so I really can't let you go scot-free. Naruto was contemplating whether to knock Mizuki out with a simple Raijin or give him third-degree burns with a Katan Jutsu. Logic, logic, logic. Fuck logic. He just tried to hurt Irika. Let's go for brute force. With that, he formed a half-ram seal and instantly, the whole clearing around them was filled with smoke. As soon as the smoke cleared up, Mizuki became paler than he already was. Hundreds of Naruto surrounded him. Every inch of the clearing was covered by a Naruto, each of them looking at him with those menacing blue eyes. He had a sudden realization, same as Irika. The clones he created in the exam were shadow clones. Let's go! One of them shouted, and together, the whole army of Naruto descended upon him. Naruto walked up to Irika, all the while listening to the sounds of bones cracking and breaking. He dispelled the clones and hid a small wince at the memories. Mizuki was literally a broken man now, in both the ways. Naruto knelt down beside Irika, freeing him easily and helping him up. Irika had a confused expression on his face. Naruto, do you? Yeah, I know about him. We're actually very good friends, he revealed nonchalantly, laughing at the horror on Irika's face. In a much gentler tone, he said, now let's get you to the hospital, sensei. That thigh wound won't heal itself. In a flash step, they disappeared. XXXXXXX. The search was called off when Naruto and Irika returned to the Hokage with the scroll. The Hokage commended them for stopping Mizuki from escaping the village with the scroll. He also gave Naruto a B-rank mission pay, as well as a B-rank mission on his record. He wanted to ask him about him knowing the Kyuubi, but decided that now wasn't the best time, so he let him go. Thanking his Gigi, he exited the tower and instantly flashed to the Hiraishin formula in his apartment. He took off his clothes and fell onto the bed in his boxers. Pulling the covers on him, he smiled and closed his eyes. His shinobi life was off to a great start. Tomorrow will be interesting.